They moved my fence 10 feet into my land, and the first thing I felt wasn't anger, it was confusion. I just stood there for a while, one boot still in the gravel driveway, staring at a line that didn't belong, like someone had quietly rearranged reality while I was gone and expected me not to notice. And I guess what bothered me most wasn't the fence itself, it was how clean it looked, like they'd already decided it was theirs. I'd been gone for 8 days. Drove up north to help my younger brother, Luke, with branding. He's got a spread outside Billings, still runs cattle the old way, and every year I go up, same routine, long days, cheap beer, hands sore by nightfall. But it's honest work, the kind that settles your head. When I left, everything back home was exactly the way it had been for as long as I could remember. 42 acres of pasture, open and quiet. The west boundary marked by an old fence my dad put up before I was even born, cedar posts, leaning a little, barbed wire rusted, but still holding strong. It wasn't pretty, but it was ours. Always had been. That land's been in my family for 3 generations. My grandfather bought it after the war, paid in cash, piece by piece. My dad used to say, "Land doesn't care about your feelings, son, but it remembers who respects it." So yeah, I noticed when something's off. And when I came back that afternoon, dust still on my truck, sun sitting low behind the tree line, something was off. At first, I couldn't even place it. Everything looked sharper, cleaner. Wrong. I drove a little further up the property, slowed down near the west side, and that's when it hit me. The fence was gone. Not repaired, not patched, gone. In its place stood this tall, cream-colored vinyl fence, straight as a ruler, posts perfectly spaced, panels smooth like something out of a catalog. It ran in one clean, uninterrupted line from the road all the way back to the trees. Didn't sag, didn't bend, didn't belong, and it wasn't where it should have been. I killed the engine, stepped out, walked toward it slowly, like maybe if I got closer it would make more sense. It didn't, because the ground told the truth. You can always tell where something used to stand, old post holes, disturbed dirt, the way grass grows different where shade used to fall. And sure enough, about 10 feet back from that new fence line, I could still see the faint scars of the original posts. That's when my stomach tightened. Not a guess, not a feeling. They'd moved it. 10 feet. Straight into my land. Now, 10 feet doesn't sound like much if you're talking about a backyard. But stretch that across 600 feet of frontage, that's real land. That's not an accident you just shrug off. That's a decision. And as I followed the fence toward the road, I started to see the rest of it. That's when I noticed the sign. Big stone base, polished face, set deep into the ground like it planned to be there forever. Carved lettering. Welcome to Pine Hollow Ridge. I actually laughed when I read that. Not because it was funny, but because it was so bold it almost felt like a joke. Welcome to my land. See, Pine Hollow Ridge used to just be empty acreage on the other side of my boundary. Then about 2 years ago, a developer came in, bought it up, split it into lots, started building houses. Big ones, 3-car garages, wide porches, those perfectly cut lawns that don't even look real unless you touch them. Everything neat, everything matching. The kind of place where people move to feel like they've escaped the city without giving up any of the control. And their main entrance, or at least it used to be, sat right along my property line. Not on it, not over it, right along it. We'd had a survey done years back when my dad was still around, and those boundary pins were set in stone literally. Nobody ever questioned it. Until now, apparently. I walked up to the barn, still trying to piece together what I was seeing, and that's when I noticed the envelope. Taped right to the door. Plain white. No stamp. I peeled it off, opened it, read it once, then again. Boundary alignment completed in accordance with Community Master Plan. That was it. No name. No contact. No apology. Just a statement. Like it had already been decided. Like I was expected to just accept it. I stood there for a long moment, paper in my hand, wind moving through the grass behind me, and I could feel something building, not explosive, not loud, just steady. Because I knew something they either didn't know or didn't think mattered. Those original survey pins, they don't move. Not unless someone physically digs them out. And I hadn't seen any signs of that. Which meant one thing. They didn't move the boundary. They just ignored it. I went inside, grabbed the old survey map from the drawer where I keep everything important. Deeds, permits, paperwork going back decades, and spread it out across the kitchen table. Ran my finger along the west line. Measured it again. Then I went back outside, walked the line myself, took my time. And sure enough, after a bit of scraping through fresh dirt near the edge of that new fence, I found it. The pin. Still there. Exactly where it had always been. Buried, but untouched. Like a quiet little witness to the whole thing. I remember crouching there, brushing dirt off the top of that metal cap, just staring at it. And I'll be honest with you, that's the moment I stopped being confused. Because now I understood exactly what they'd done. And more importantly, I understood what they were counting on. They were counting on me to be the kind of guy who doesn't make trouble. The kind of guy who looks at 10 feet and thinks, not worth the fight. They were counting on time doing the rest. Because once something like that sits long enough, it starts to feel permanent. I stood up, looked back at that fence, then at the sign, then out toward their neat little entrance road cutting through what used to be a clean, honest boundary. And I thought about my dad, about what he would have said if he saw that line pushed back like it didn't matter. And I could almost hear it. Land remembers. So I didn't call them, didn't march over there, didn't raise my voice. Because this wasn't the kind of situation you handle with emotion. This was the kind you handle, carefully. I went back inside, picked up the phone, and called a surveyor. The surveyor showed up 2 days later, just after sunrise, like he'd done this 1,000 times before and didn't need an audience. Name was Caleb. Mid-50s, quiet type, wore one of those faded caps that probably hadn't left his head since the early 2000s. He didn't ask a lot of questions, just shook my hand, glanced once at the fence, once at the sign, and gave me this look that said, yeah, I've seen this kind of thing before. Not uncommon, apparently, but still not legal. We walked the property together, slow and methodical. I showed him the original pins I'd uncovered, and he nodded, tapped one lightly with his boot like he was greeting an old friend. These haven't moved, he said, almost to himself. I didn't say anything, just let him work. He brought out his equipment, set up near the road, and started running lines. Little beeps, numbers, quiet calculations, nothing dramatic. No tension in his movements. But I felt it, because every step he took, every measurement he confirmed, was stacking weight behind something I already knew was coming. By mid-morning, he started placing the flags. Bright orange, hard to miss. And he didn't place them along the fence. No, he placed them where the boundary actually was. 10 feet back. Straight line. Clean. Unarguable. I followed him as he moved down the line, watching those flags appear one after another like a trail of truth cutting through someone else's version of reality. And then we got to the entrance. That's where things got interesting. Because Pine Hollow Ridge didn't just move a fence. They built their entire entrance road around that new line. Wide asphalt, fresh striping, landscaped edges, all of it designed to look impressive when you drove in. But now those orange flags, they didn't run beside it. They ran straight through it. Right down the middle. I stopped walking. Caleb didn't. He just kept placing flags like it was the most normal thing in the world, one every few yards, each one landing right across that smooth blacktop. When he finished, he stepped back, wiped his hands on his jeans, and looked at me. Well, he said, half that road's yours. Now that was the moment things shifted. Because up until then, it was about a fence. 10 feet of dirt. Annoying, sure, but manageable. But a road? A main entrance? That's not something you ignore. That's something people depend on. That's something that can't just quietly stay wrong. I thanked him, paid him, and he handed me the official survey report before he left. Clean, detailed, signed. Everything exactly where it was supposed to be. Everything exactly where they'd ignored it. I stood there for a while after he drove off, looking at those flags cutting through their entrance like a fault line. Cars were already starting to roll in, contractors, landscapers, a couple early visitors maybe, and you could see it in their faces as they slowed down. Confusion. They'd look at the road, then at the flags, then back at the road again like their brain was trying to reconcile something that didn't add up. And that's when I realized something else. Timing. Because that weekend was their open house. Big one. They'd been advertising it for weeks. Fresh listings, model homes staged, agents ready to close deals. They needed that entrance. Clean. Impressive. Seamless. And now there was a bright orange line running through the middle of it, saying otherwise. I went back to the barn, grabbed a folding chair, poured myself a cup of coffee, and sat there for a bit, just thinking. Not rushing. Not reacting. Planning. Because there's a difference between proving you're right and making it matter. and if they were willing to move a fence without asking. I had a feeling they weren't going to fix it unless they had to. So I decided to make it unavoidable. That night, just before dark, I fired up the tractor. Old thing. Loud, slow, not built for speed, but built to last. My dad bought it used when I was a kid, and it's been part of this land longer than most of the trees out here. I drove it down toward the entrance, headlights cutting across that polished sign. The words Pine Hollow Ridge glowing soft in the evening light like they didn't have a care in the world. Then I lined it up, right along the flag boundary, half on gravel, half on asphalt, exactly where my land cut through their road. And I shut it off, left the hazard lights blinking. Slow, steady, like a heartbeat. Next morning, I brought the chair, set it up right beside the tractor, coffee in hand, and waited. It didn't take long. First wave came early. A couple in a clean SUV, probably mid-40s, dressed like they were trying to picture themselves living there already. They pulled up, slowed down, then stopped. Rolled the window down. The guy leaned out, looked at me, then at the tractor. Is this the entrance? I took a sip of coffee. Depends, I said. You buying half a road, or all of it? He blinked. Didn't quite know what to do with that. They backed up after a moment, turned around, and left. Next came more. Realtors, families, curious neighbors, each one hitting that same wall of confusion, because nothing about the scene made sense from their side. A brand new development, with a farmer sitting in a folding chair, blocking the road like he had every right to be there. Which, of course, I did. By mid-morning, traffic was backing up toward the highway. Not full gridlock, but enough to draw attention. Enough to start causing problems. And problems get noticed. Around 11:30, I saw him, walking fast from the direction of the model homes, sunglasses on, phone in hand, that tight, controlled expression people wear when they're trying not to look angry in public. That was Daniel Harper, president of the HOA. I'd seen him before, from a distance. Never spoke. Didn't need to. You can tell a lot about a man by the way he carries himself on land that isn't his. He stopped a few feet from me, looked at the tractor, then at the flags, then finally at me. You're obstructing a private roadway, he said. Voice calm, measured, practiced. I set my coffee down, reached into my jacket, and handed him a copy of the survey. No, I said. I'm sitting on my property. He took the paper, glanced at it, and I watched the moment it clicked. Not fully, but enough. Enough to shift something behind his eyes. This has to be a mistake, he said. Yeah, I replied. It is. He looked back at the road, at the flags, at the sign, all that polished confidence starting to crack just a little at the edges. This was handled by our contractor, he said. If there's a discrepancy, we'll address it. I leaned back in my chair. Funny thing about discrepancies, I said. They usually don't come with concrete foundations. He didn't like that. You could tell. But he kept it together. Because guys like him, they don't lose control in public. They reposition. We'll get this sorted out quickly, he said. In the meantime, I need you to move this equipment so we can proceed with scheduled showings. I looked at the road, then at him, then back at the road again. No, I said. That word hung there for a second. Simple. Final. His jaw tightened just enough to notice. You're creating a liability situation, he said. You already did, I replied. And right there, standing between a polished entrance and a line of orange flags, something changed. Because this wasn't a misunderstanding anymore. This was a problem, and it wasn't going away quietly. He stepped back, pulled out his phone, started making calls. I just sat there, sipped my coffee, watched it unfold. Because now, it wasn't about whether they'd fix it. It was about how much it was going to cost them not to. And by the time the second day of that open house rolled around, that cost was starting to show. By the second day, you could feel the shift, not just in the air, but in people. The kind of quiet tension that settles over a place when something's gone sideways and nobody wants to say it out loud yet. But everyone knows. I got there a little earlier that morning. Same chair, same spot. Coffee a little stronger this time. Didn't say much to anyone. Just nodded when folks looked my way, let the scene speak for itself. Because by now, it didn't need explaining. You had a line of orange flags cutting straight through a brand new entrance, a tractor parked like it had every right to be there, and a steady stream of confused buyers turning around before they even got a proper look at the houses. That's not the kind of first impression you recover from easily. Around mid-morning, I noticed something different. Less traffic, more conversations. People standing in small groups near the edge of the road, pointing, whispering, checking their phones like maybe they'd missed something in the listing. And then I saw the agents. Trying. You could tell they were trying. Smiles stretched just a little too tight, voices just a little too rehearsed. Just a minor access issue. One of them said to a couple nearby, "It'll be resolved shortly." I almost felt bad for her. Almost. Because here's the thing. This wasn't just about a fence anymore, or even a road. This was about trust. And once that starts to crack, especially when you're selling something as big as a home, people notice. They start asking questions. Questions you can't always answer cleanly. Around noon, Daniel came back. But this time, he wasn't alone. Dark sedan pulled up near the shoulder, smooth and quiet, like it didn't want to draw attention but couldn't help it anyway. Two men stepped out. One I recognized. Daniel. The other didn't need an introduction. Suit. Briefcase. That calm, detached look of someone who deals with problems by turning them into paperwork. Lawyer. They walked up together, slower this time. No rush. No sharp edges. Just controlled. Professional. Daniel gave me a nod. Morning. I tipped my cup slightly. Morning. The lawyer stepped forward, extended a hand. Mr. Carter, I'm James Whitaker, representing Pine Hollow Development. I shook it. Firm. Neutral. Didn't say much. Let him lead. We understand there's been a boundary concern, he continued, voice smooth, practiced. And we'd like to resolve this as efficiently as possible. I nodded once. Good. He glanced at the tractor, the flags, the road. Took it all in. Then back to me. Our client is prepared to remove the fence, dismantle the sign, and restore your property to its original condition. Now, on paper, that sounds reasonable. Fix the mistake. Put things back. Walk away. But I didn't answer right away. I just looked past them, out toward that entrance, the concrete base under that sign. The landscaping, the irrigation lines I knew were buried underneath. All of it built not by accident, but by decision. Money spent. Time invested. All assuming no one would push back. I looked back at him. Too late, I said. There it was again. That pause. That small moment where expectations don't line up with reality. I'm sorry, he said. You poured concrete. I continued, calm, steady. Ran utilities. Built a road. Sold an idea around it. I gestured toward the entrance. That's not something you just undo like it didn't happen. Daniel shifted slightly beside him. Didn't interrupt. But I could see it, that growing awareness that this wasn't going to be a quick fix. The lawyer adjusted his stance. Well, he said, if restoration is not acceptable, we're open to discussing compensation. Now we were getting somewhere. I set my cup down, stood up slowly, brushed a bit of dust off my jeans, took a step closer so we were all on the same level. No, I said, you're not compensating me for a mistake. I paused. You're buying a solution. He watched me carefully. Didn't speak. You've got two options, I continued. Option 1, you remove everything. Fence, sign, road access, all of it. You restore my land, and you don't use that entrance again until the county approves a new one. However long that takes. I let that sit for a second, because we both knew what that meant. Delays, permits, inspections, months, maybe longer. And in that time, no clean access, no sales momentum, no confidence. Option 2, I said, you keep it exactly how it is. I nodded toward the road. But that 10-foot strip becomes mine in writing. Daniel frowned slightly. The lawyer stayed still. You purchase a permanent easement, I continued. Commercial frontage rate, not residential. I could see it land. That word, commercial, different number, bigger number. On top of that, I added, you pay back use for every day that road's been on my land without permission, and you cover every cost I've had dealing with this, survey, legal, all of it. Silence. Not the awkward kind, the calculating kind. Cars rolled slowly in the background, some stopping, some turning around, the quiet hum of a situation getting more expensive by the minute. Daniel finally spoke. That's excessive. I looked at him. No, I said. What's excessive is moving a boundary and hoping nobody notices. That hit. You could see it. Because for the first time since this started, there wasn't a clean response ready. The lawyer cleared his throat slightly. We'll need to review those terms. I nodded. Take your time. I glanced at the road. Just know, nothing moves until this does. They stepped back, walked toward the car. Quiet conversation between them, low voices, tight expressions. And then they left. That afternoon, things got quieter. Fewer visitors. More cancellations. You could almost feel the weight settling over that development like a cloud that wasn't going to pass on its own. I went home that evening, same as always. Fed the animals. Checked the fences, the ones that were actually mine. Sat on the porch for a bit as the sun dropped behind the trees. And I thought about how strange it is. How something as small as 10 feet can reveal exactly how people think. 2 days later, they came back. No lawyer this time. Just Daniel. He walked up slower than before. No sunglasses. No phone in his hand. Just a man who'd done the math. "We'll sign," he said. I studied him for a moment. Not to intimidate, just to understand. "Full terms?" I asked. He nodded once. "All of it." I let out a breath I didn't realize I'd been holding. Not relief. Just closure. "All right," I said. We shook on it. No drama. No raised voices. Just a deal, built on a line that should have never been crossed. Paperwork got handled fast after that. Funny how quickly things move when they need to. Within 48 hours, it was done. Signed. Filed. Official. That 10-foot strip? Still mine. Always will be. But now, every car that rolls through that entrance, every open house, every delivery, every new homeowner pulling in after a long day, they're all driving across land they pay me for. Monthly. On time. Like clockwork. And that sign? Still standing. Pine Hollow Ridge. Clean. Polished. Permanent. Only difference is, now it means something a little different to me. Because every time I pass it, I don't see a mistake. I see a reminder. That land doesn't care about plans or paperwork or how nice something looks when it's finished. It remembers where it belongs. And sooner or later, it makes sure you do too. Now here's the part I'm curious about. Because I know some folks will say I should have just let them fix it, taken the fence back, moved on, kept the peace. And others will say they got exactly what they deserved. So I want to hear it from you. Was that fair? Or did I take it too far? Drop your thoughts in the comments. I read more of them than you'd think. And if you've ever dealt with an HOA, a bad neighbor, or someone who thought they could quietly take a little more than they should, go ahead and hit that like button, maybe subscribe. Because stories like this, they happen more often than people realize.